Would you kill to survive? Think about it for one moment and imagine this situation. Being stranded on a small boat at sea with no food, no water, and no hope of rescue. As days pass, one of your companions grows gravely ill while you and others are on the brink of starvation and death. A decision looms. Should the weakest person be sacrificed so you and others can live to see another day? In short, would you kill to survive? This chilling dilemma is central to the case of R versus Dudley and Stephens, 1884, one of the most fascinating but unsettling and controversial cases in English criminal law. You see, it pushes us to think about the boundaries of what the law should justify in extreme situations and raises profound questions about the morality of necessity and the value of human life. The facts of R versus Dudley and Stephens are these. 4 people, Tom Dudley, Edwin Stephens, Edmund Brooks, and a 17-year-old cabin boy, Richard Parker, were stranded in the open ocean in a small boat after their ship sank during a storm. With no food left, having run out 7 days before, no water for 5 days, and with no sign of being rescued, and with Parker severely weakened and close to death, and having no close family, Dudley and Stephens made the fateful decision to kill him so that they and another person, Brooks, could survive by consuming Parker's body. Now, Brooks, the third male on the stranded boat, though present, did not take part in killing Parker, but ate the flesh of Parker to avoid starvation. After 24 days at sea, the men were finally rescued and returned to England, where Dudley and Stephens were charged with murder. Brooks was spared prosecution as he had not participated in the actual killing of Parker. Now, the primary legal question in this case and at trial was whether the defence of necessity could excuse the murder of Parker. Dudley and Stephens argued that killing Parker was essential for their own survival and that under the extreme circumstances, they had no alternative. They both relied on the defence of necessity to the murder charge, claiming that the moral imperative to preserve life justified their actions. However, the court disagreed. Lord Coleridge, in delivering the judgment, ruled that necessity in these circumstances could not be a defence to murder, the intentional killing of an innocent person, Parker. Allowing such a defence of necessity, he argued, would set a dangerous precedent, eroding the fundamental principles that all human life is valuable and must be protected by law. The judge said this: "Now it is admitted that the deliberate killing of this unoffending and unresisting boy was clearly murder, unless the killing can be justified by some well-recognised excuse admitted by law. It is further admitted that there was, in this case, no such excuse unless the killing was justified by what has been called necessity. But the temptation to the act which existed here was not what the law has ever called necessity, nor is this to be regretted. Though law and morality are not the same, and many things may be immoral which are not necessarily legal, yet the absolute divorce of law from morality would be of fatal consequence, and such divorce would follow if the temptation to murder in this case were to be held by law as an absolute defence to it." The judge continued, "It is not needful to point out the awful danger of admitting the principle which has been contended for. Who is to be the judge of this sort of necessity? By what measure is the comparative value of lives to be measured? Is it to be strength or intellect or what? It is plain that the principle leaves to him who is to profit by it to determine the necessity which will justify him in deliberately taking another's life to save his own. In this case, the weakest, the youngest, the most unresisting was chosen. Was it more necessary to kill him than one of the grown men?" The judge then answered the question. The answer must be no. The unavailability of the defence of necessity to murder, as the judge strongly alluded to, may be because of the collusion between the adult defendants to kill the youngest, weakest and most vulnerable on that small boat. In the end, Dudley and Stephens were convicted of murder, although their death sentence was commuted to 6 months imprisonment. The case of R versus Dudley and Stephens raises fundamental questions centred on the tensions between survival instincts, legal principles, and the sanctity of life. Can necessity ever justify taking another person's life? And should the law make exceptions in extreme circumstances? But what do you think? And more importantly, what would you do in the face of a life and death situation? Would you kill to survive? Feel free to comment, follow, like, and share.